Good day to you, folks of YouTube. I am your host, Vert343, back again to slather your mind in Doom lore, stuff it into a vuvuzela, and then blow it out into a vat of soup. Today we're going to be talking about a topic I thought was fairly interesting, but haven't actually seen covered in a Doom lore video. Could the Doomslayer take on the Flood from Halo? I know similar videos have been made by Midnight and Ranout Gaming, but they focus on either the demons and not the Doomslayer, or could he survive in the Halo universe, not whether he could fight the Flood specifically. The scenario is this. At the end of Doom 2016, Samuel Hayden sends the Doomslayer away with his tether system, landing him on Earth in the Halo universe at the start of a Flood invasion. The Slayer has to not only fight off this invasion with minimal help from the Marines of the UNSC, but he has to then make his way to an otherwise habitable planet which was recently overrun by the Flood, having not yet evolved a keymind. He must then destroy all of the Flood on the surface of the planet so that the UNSC can reopen a portal back to his own universe using ancient technology unique to that planet. Yeah, I know it's a bit of a stretch, but that's what we're going with. The first waves are no match for the Doomslayer. He has immense power and a massive supply of Argent energy. Hell, they likely don't even get that many hits in, as the Slayer's weaponry from Doom 2016 tears massive holes in the smallish numbers of combat forms and infection forms that make up the first few waves. The few of them that have basic weapons such as rifles try hopelessly to punch through the Praetor suit, barely if even scratching the paintwork as the Slayer tears their friends to shreds. The only notable thing I could imagine happening in this phase of the fight is the first of the Slayer's 3 BFG blasts being fired. It is likely that the Slayer would only get 3 shots with his BFG because it uses special ammo that I don't think could be replicated by the UNSC. His plasma rifle and Gauss cannon on the other hand use basic plasma ammo, which could likely be supplemented or replaced with plasma ammo from other weapons modified to fit by the UNSC. His shotguns, rifle, Gatling gun, and pistol, on the other hand, either use basic projectile ammo types or have infinite ammo by default, making them able to be used ad nauseum. Now, I have to explain, the BFG works a bit differently in this challenge than it does against the Demons of Hell. When fired, it would annihilate all of the Flood in a pretty significant radius, even though it wouldn't lock onto them at all. Though just having that sheer amount of Argent energy flying by would likely cook the Flood where they stand, not to mention obliterating anything it hits directly. Upon seeing this, the Slayer would likely change his tactics to not use the BFG until he sees a much more deadly enemy, or something of value to shoot it at, as it isn't as good at crowd control in this particular circumstance, though I'd say it's probably actually quite a bit better when it comes to single target damage. With maybe the first 5 waves getting completely obliterated, the second group of waves begin coming. The second group is where the first few pure forms come in, and they get completely obliterated. The pure forms, while much stronger than the combat and infection forms the Slayer killed with the equivalent of a death stare, are still a practically negative threat to the Slayer on their own. All of these Flood forms are still extremely weak to heat, with something as weak as an incendiary grenade being able to take down a tank form, with plasma grenades also being a good choice. The Slayer's best grenade option here is the hologram, which makes a plasma rifle wielding distraction to not only deal a fair bit of damage, but to draw attention away from himself. As for his weapons, his plasma rifle and Gauss cannon will remain highly effective, while his chain gun may take a backseat to the explosive micro-missiles of his rifle and grenades of his shotgun. Although these waves physically could not kill the Doomslayer on their own, they do serve one purpose in helping the Flood to defeat the Doomslayer, sapping his supply of Argent energy and probing for weaknesses in his Praetor suit. The Doomslayer is no longer in Hell, so while the waves upon waves of Flood infection, combat and pure forms invading Earth pose little threat, the infection forms can start sapping him and his Praetor suit of Argent energy, weakening him over time. Unfortunately for the Flood, this is a double-edged sword, as for every Flood form he kills, he does still get more powerful by an unknown amount. This is not tied to Argent energy, by the way, since it is just from his fallen foes, as stated in the Slayer's Testament. Eventually, the assault on Earth will let up, as there will be few accessible beings remaining that the Flood can even infect, and the Slayer is still tearing up just about any Flood form on the planet. At this, the remains of the UNSC will rally to get the Slayer aboard the Flood's main attack vessel, having seen him annihilate wave after wave of Flood combatants. The Slayer would obviously agree to this. He saw the Flood ruining people's lives, their homes, and their bodies with his own two eyes, similar to how the demons ruined his home. Glossing over how they get the Slayer aboard the ship, since this isn't about whether the UNSC can get a dude aboard a Flood ship, the Slayer now has to kill his way to the bridge and battle his first proto-Gravemind. The real threat, however, isn't the immobile, non-hostile proto-Gravemind. It's the Juggernaut Guards. There will likely only be 2 or 3 Juggernauts, but they are extremely powerful. Powerful enough to kill Master Chief, aka John 117, in just one single hit. Out of however many Juggernaut Guards there will be, the first one is the one that will pose the most threat to the Slayer, as he does not yet know how to fight it compared to the combat, infection and pure forms he's already learnt how to obliterate. It's unlikely the Slayer would go to his BFG for this, considering he knows bigger threats are to come, meaning he's likely to go for his Gorse Cannon. This goes one of 2 ways. Either he doesn't charge up for siege mode and punches a relatively nice hole in the Juggernaut, either crippling or severely hurting it, or he charges it for siege mode and gets slapped with a tentacle. If he gets slapped, chances are he survives. His suit's impact compensation would negate the impact of the tentacle against the Slayer and then the Slayer against the wall, and his raw strength would be more than enough to get the tentacle off of him. However, if he gets slapped in 2 certain positions, it could cause him a critical issue. Number 1 is around his hands, waist and gun. This could lead to the destruction of his Gorse Cannon, putting him at a pretty severe disadvantage. The second option is if it hits his helmet, which could lead to cracking or outright destroying his faceplate, crippling the Slayer's HUD and possibly leaving a gaping hole in his Praetor suit. Assuming he gets through this, figuring out that his Gorse Cannon is about as effective here as it would be against a Baron of Hell, serving as his equivalent to a Spartan laser and massively outclassing the Type 25 plasma rifle, shown capable of killing one in not too many shots in Halo Fireteam Raven. He will likely then continue to the main room immediately after blasting a big hole or 2 in the Juggernaut, as its backup will be quote-unquote shut down when it dies. Eventually, he would make it to the bridge and quickly annihilate the proto-Gravemind, ending the assault on Earth. He now uses an escape pod to escape the ship, being picked up by the UNSC and transported to his next target, the planet with the device to send him home. Since I can't find much if any information on how many Graveminds are needed for a Keymind to form, I'm going to guess it's like 2. Because apparently most of the time only 1 exists, so we'll go with 2 to make it a bit more difficult. The Gravemind poses a few big threats to the Doomslayer. Firstly, and most importantly, is the Logic Plague, which it could use to corrupt the likely unprotected Vega AI that the Slayer has been carrying thus far, giving it access to the diagnostics of the Praetor suit, its strengths, weaknesses and likely even knowledge of its operating system. The knowledge that Vega has about the Slayer, his abilities, his exploits and combat strategies would make the Flood significantly better at fending him off, also giving them the knowledge of where the weakest points in his armor are, making his Argent energy supply drain faster and earlier. Secondly, and least importantly, is its extremely tactical mind, which it could use in a few ways. It could try to trick the Slayer into not attacking and instead working against the UNSC, though I doubt the Slayer would be dumb enough to fall for that after being attacked repeatedly, especially since it kinda happened before when the demons did it. Alternatively, it could tell him it is going to let him go, and then attack him when his back is turned, giving it a noticeable advantage in mauling the Slayer. The most boring way it could use tactics is to simply open the portal and let the Slayer go home, effectively removing their biggest threat at that time without any loss of its own lives. This would be massively advantageous to the Flood, but we're gonna have to assume that doesn't happen for the sake of this challenge. So assuming it doesn't just want to send the Slayer home, which if it does do, the Slayer is nigh guaranteed to survive as he fought an unprepared, essentially weaker than demons enemy, while having a very strong get out of jail free Argent energy based shield in the form of his Argent barrier. If it does decide to fight the Slayer, it could go one of two ways. Either A, it never gets control of Vega and then does not find a way past the Slayer's Praetor suit that is also effective enough to drain his Argent barrier before he can wipe out the two grave mines and bring in the UNSC to clean up the already failing flood hordes on the planet and then send him home. Or B, it gets control of Vega, finds the weak spots in the Praetor suit and cracks it open like a can of worms. And then the question really just becomes, how long does the Argent barrier last? I would say that given just how many flood forces would be on the planet, it wouldn't be long enough if they can break through the Praetor suit before the first Gravemind gets Glory killed, since the first Gravemind's death would likely signal that at least 60% of the Flood's forces are destroyed on that planet. But this is where you all come in. Do you think the Slayer would make it out alive? What do you think the most likely outcome is? What have I missed in my research? What option would the Flood actually take? Would the Gravemind just send the Slayer home and be done with it, or would they fight tooth and nail to the death against a creature from another dimension with literal eons of combat experience? Would the Slayer still have the Vega chip if they do fight it out? To all you Halo fans out there though, I'm really sorry if this video isn't the best, as I've only played part of Halo 3 myself. I know I really should play the whole thing through. Thank you all for watching, please remember to like, comment how I fucked this up, and subscribe for more lore videos. And then BFG blast that bell icon to see more from me. I have been your host Vert343, signing off. Peace out, gentlemen.